But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go, because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it.
It is the show that people love to hate.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching and hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean, it is a rabies-infested hen house.
And the reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last weekend.
Yeah, they have nothing else to talk about. Maybe you should get the lawyer that worked on that Covington Catholic school case. What was that, a $200 million settlement?
What if I told you that the most powerful daytime talk show in America, the one built on fiery debates and applause lines, is now standing on the edge of a $100 million legal cliff? That's exactly where The View has found itself, after Charlie Kirk launched a lawsuit so massive it could change daytime television forever. And just when it looked like the drama couldn't get any hotter, Joe Rogan stepped in, torch in hand, and absolutely unloaded on Sonny HOSTIN with one of the sharpest takedowns we've ever seen. This isn't tabloid drama. This is a courtroom battle wrapped in sarcasm, outrage, and the kind of commentary that can only come from Rogan himself. But let's rewind for a moment. This entire controversy didn't just appear out of nowhere. It started when Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA, accused the hosts of The View of crossing a line, one so serious it turned into a legal firestorm.
The culture shift between right and left authoritarianism, and now people don't recognize that if you just stopped looking at it in terms of red and blue, look at the actions, whether it's war, suppression of free speech, pharmacological interventions that are mandatory, whatever it is, that used to all be associated with the authoritative right, the authoritarian right, and now those things are being embraced by the left. And I just think it's just an ideology thing, and I think we get confused and we think we're on the right side, and if it's our side that's saying this, for sure that's the right thing to do, and no one's critically thinking about this.
Joe Rogan is the gateway drug for young men that thought they were Democrats to become MAGA. Joe Rogan is the bridge. And on that bridge, they'll see RFK. They'll see Elon.
Kirk claimed that more than 5,000 high school and college students who attended his conservative summit were smeared on national television, painted in a way that could follow them for the rest of their lives. Kirk said he was used to being attacked as a public figure. He'd taken political punches before. But to go after teenagers and college kids who had simply traveled across the country to hear from speakers and learn, was beyond reckless. In his eyes, it was defamation dressed up as television banter.
Charlie Kirk's the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept The View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there, of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country, that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked.
The first step was an apology. The View issued one, but Kirk wasn't satisfied. He called it empty, a weak attempt to smooth things over. He made it clear the students were the real victims, and their reputations had been dragged through the mud. And that's when things escalated. The lawsuit dropped, with a jaw-dropping $100 million price tag attached to it. Not a symbolic sum, not a headline grab. Kirk and his team insisted this was about accountability. This wasn't just, oops, we misspoke. This was the type of mistake that deserved consequences big enough to make the entire media industry think twice. And if there's anyone who knows how to amplify a story like this, it's Joe Rogan. The world's most popular podcaster saw an opening, and instead of treading carefully, he ran straight into the chaos. Rogan's style has always been unfiltered, brutally honest, and sometimes brutally funny. This was no exception. He mocked The View for being reckless, for priding itself on being a place of intelligent conversation while allegedly spitting out accusations with no proof. He said it was like watching someone juggle fireworks indoors and acting shocked when the room caught fire. But Rogan didn't stop at general criticism. He zeroed in on Sunny Hostin, lawyer, co-host, and now, in Rogan's words, the ironic centerpiece of this legal mess. The fact that Hostin, with her legal training, could end up at the heart of a potential lawsuit was almost too rich for Rogan to ignore. He called it the perfect twist of hubris, a trained legal professional, supposedly careful with words, getting her show dragged into one of the biggest media lawsuits in years. His sarcasm was merciless, and the internet exploded with clips of his takedown.
But with that show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in. You know, and they always bring on a token conservative woman and they yell over her and silence her. And, you know, they did that with Meghan McCain, and they did that with what is that other blonde woman from Survivor? Do you remember her, Jamie? She was always yelling. I mean, it's a bizarre show. I think the way before you start, I think the way you described it is brilliant, and the way we should all look at it. Of course, you're going to see race. The idea of being colorblind is ridiculous, but treat everybody. They're just human beings. Yeah. Everybody's just individuals.
Then came the money talk. $100 million. Rogan reminded his audience just how enormous that number really is. It's private island money, rocket launch money, campaign funding money. And Charlie Kirk was pointing it all at The View. Rogan made sure everyone felt the weight of that figure. This wasn't Twitter beef or celebrity gossip. This was a financial bombshell that could shake the foundations of daytime TV. Rogan also highlighted the hypocrisy of the show. He mocked their long tradition of bringing on token conservative voices only to shout them down.
It's a very strange show, but it's fun to watch. It's just fun to watch them.
It's good entertainment.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Well, they're just, you know, it's interesting because I think Sunny is very intelligent, but she's ideologically captured. Right. You know, that's sort of, I think the other ones, there's a couple of the other ones, don't have to name any names, who are just very dull-minded. But I think Sunny's not one of them. I think she's smart, but captured.
Sure, I think she came into it with an agenda.
Of course.
You know.
They do everything with an agenda.
Meghan McCain was one of those. Before her, other women were brought in to play the role of balance, but it was never balance. It was entertainment through conflict. Rogan painted The View as an ideological bubble, one where dissent wasn't debated, it was suffocated. And then he twisted the knife deeper. He said The View's audience wasn't even fully real. Many were paid, seated clappers meant to keep the energy high, not genuine fans. He laughed at the idea that the studio applause represented America. He even joked that the real hardcore fans of The View were probably immobile, stuck at home, while the studio filled the seats with whoever was available.
Not really their audience. Their audience is a group of people they bring in to watch television shows. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen audiences before for TV shows, but a lot of them are paid. They're paid to be there. So, because they have to guarantee that there's going to be people there. So there's services that you hire. And when a show gets really, really popular, you know, like Letterman or something like that, obviously it has its own fan base. Right. Those people will try to get tickets before anybody else does. And in that case, they probably don't need to use a service anymore. They just get actual fans. But arguably, like, the real fans of The View that are like, oh, these ladies are on point, most of those people can't leave the house. Like, they're probably immobile.
Right.
It was savage, but it cut to the heart of his argument. The show was more performance than truth. Meanwhile, Kirk stood firm on his position. He reiterated that this wasn't about him. He was fine with taking punches, but targeting students crossed a moral and legal line. He even pointed to other high-profile defamation cases, like the Kevington Catholic case, where a massive settlement was reached. To him, this wasn't unprecedented, it was justice. And his team of lawyers, some of the best in the business, were gearing up to take this all the way if necessary. Rogan seized on that. 2. He mocked the idea that a show like The View, run by ABC, a company under the banner of one of the biggest media giants in the world, could still allow something this reckless to slip through. He compared it to a doctor diagnosing a patient using astrology instead of medicine.
This is the most important part. This is right after she was saying, we are run by ABC News. You should trust us, not Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. So she by saying we should trust them because they're double checked by ABC News, and then making the stupidest fucking statement. Like you didn't listen to what I said.
Yeah.
You didn't listen to what the wildlife biologist, and that's only a part of what he said.
I can't
the
believe
other
Joy
part of what he
Behar
said
didn't
was
weigh.
there was something before that where he was explaining encounters with giant reptiles. And then
don't
there's
know.
also, listen,
It doesn't make sense to me that a middle-aged woman could be dumb.
when you're worried about losing your job and
Yeah.
you're worried about podcasts taking over and who's the source.
It wasn't just funny, it was damning. The point was clear. If the biggest networks in the country could make mistakes this huge, maybe they weren't the trustworthy guardians of truth they claimed to be. And then there was the broader cultural commentary. Rogan used this lawsuit as a springboard to talk about how the lines between right and left had blurred. He said people cling to their side, Republican or Democrat, and assume their team is always right, without critically thinking about what's actually happening. He pointed to authoritarian behavior, censorship, and the obsession with controlling narratives, saying these used to be associated with the far right, but were now being embraced by the left. It wasn't about red versus blue anymore. It was about who was willing to question power and who wasn't. Sunny Hostin became the face of all of this. Rogan said she was smart, no doubt about it, but ideologically captured. In his eyes, she wasn't thinking critically anymore. She was just a soldier for a narrative. And that, he said, was what made the whole situation so dangerous. The roast was brutal, but it wasn't just comedy. Rogan knew exactly what he was doing. His takedown ensured the story stayed alive, not just for a news cycle, but for weeks.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men actually voting more for him, and you have and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Right.
Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach.
I have no hate for Joy Behar. If I saw her, I'd give her a hug. I'd probably say the same thing about me if I was her. You're worried about losing your job, and you're worried about podcasts taking over, and who's the source of news, and we said Donald Trump was Hitler, but half the country disagreed with us, and he won, and this is fucking great, and Joe Rogan believes in dragons.
Clips of his commentary went viral across every platform, shared by supporters, critics, and everyone in between. Even people who had never watched The View or cared about Charlie Kirk suddenly knew about the lawsuit. That's the power Rogan wields, and he used it to maximum effect. As the story grew, media analysts started weighing in. Some said Kirk's lawsuit had a strong case. Others thought it was overblown. But everyone agreed on one thing. This was a wake-up call. Daytime TV had operated for years like it was immune to consequences. Hosts could say outrageous things, issue half-hearted apologies, and move on. But maybe those days were over. Maybe the price of reckless commentary had finally caught up to them. Rogan even hinted this could be the start of a trend. He said if Kirk won, other public figures might start pushing back too, launching lawsuits that could scare the media into accountability. Whether or not that happens, one thing is undeniable. This lawsuit has already changed the conversation. By the end of his roast, Rogan had reframed the entire saga. This wasn't just about one lawsuit. It was about the future of media. Could shows like The View keep running on outrage, applause, and unchecked claims? Or would they finally have to treat their words with the same seriousness they demand from others? The stakes couldn't be higher. The lawsuit is still looming, the internet is still buzzing, and the entire media world is holding its breath. Charlie Kirk, Joe Rogan, Sunny Hostin, and The View, three forces colliding in a way no one saw coming. And as Rogan reminded everyone, this isn't just a headline. It's a moment that could change the rules of the game forever. One massive lawsuit. One savage roast. and one talk show on the ropes. This isn't just drama, it's history in the making.